Sasi Ash. I'm Duamish, Naquami, Kalalam, Lummi, Saanich, Casey, Nooksack, Simiyama. And in the old days, we had an alliance up and down the west coast, and they married out into the other tribes. And our alliance was 100 years old in 1792 when Vancouver sailed into the Straits of Juan de Fuca. And so we were supposed to know who we came from because it traces back to these alliances. That song comes from a whale that came to our beach in 1996. And they brought me down there. They called me down to the beach because I was a tribal judge then. And the United States Coast Guard, National Marine Fisheries, the State Patrol, and the sheriffs were telling our people, stay away from that whale. It's a federally protected animal. Don't touch that whale. You will go to jail. Do not approach the whale. And they asked my opinion. And I told them, you have federal law and state law and modern tribal law that tells you not to approach the whale. Then you have traditional law that tells you you have to save that whale. And if you cannot save that whale, if she dies on our beach, then she's a gift to the Lummi people. And so how many of you will go out there and save that whale? Time and tide were against her. But we got out there and we prayed. And we prayed, we moved that whale. But it was too late. The water was too shallow. And she died. Her heart gave out. The next day we moved her all the way to the beach, and everybody in the community had feast. They butchered the whale. Indian, non-Indian, everybody gathered. And what we didn't eat, we brought out to the sand fleas and all the other animals to share. But that was her song she was singing when she died. People were crying, they could hear her song. They could hear her last song. And we brought in the macaws who came over and prayed over her, did sacred ceremony. I served 3 different times on the Lummi Tribal Council. I've been working for our people for 39 years. Seen a lot of tribal leaders nationally come and go. A lot of elders. Cried many tears for elders that are gone from the national scene. All of our tribes suffer the loss. We all have somebody that stands up because they know somebody in the community is suffering. The grandparents are suffering. The mothers, the fathers, the children are suffering. Everything that's happened to us is a part of the system that has attempted to destroy us, to undermine everything we represent to ourselves. They've done everything they could. Took our children to the boarding schools. I went to boarding school. Many of our people have gone to boarding schools. They brought in Christianity, forcing us to convert. In 1872, they passed the Indian Religious Crimes Code. It was the Department of Interior Circular 1665. Illegal to pray as an Indian. Illegal to do song, dance, or ceremony. No trial, no jury, no right to a lawyer. All my Christian brother had to do was point at me and say he was practicing the old ways, and you'd go to jail. And they said if your family died while you're in jail, it's your own fault. You shouldn't have been doing that. We grew up in a family where our elders had to go into the woods. They had a longhouse out there to practice. Everybody in the community had to wait for that white governmental agent to go to sleep. or you'd go to jail. All of us have communities and ways in which we preserved what we have. I'm really proud to know the elders and leaders that work to defend our rights to spirituality. In 1978, when they passed the American Indian Religious Freedom Act, it only lasted 10 years. And Sandra Day O'Connor authored an opinion. It's not worth the paper it's written on. It's not only bad law, it's bad policy. Up at Lummi, they raided our Siawan. My brother and I are Siawan. My prior brothers from Tsleil-Waututh and Tulalip were painted people. They raided us in the state and Canada, sending them to prison in the 80s. They came in and raided us for having eagle feathers. And they went to prison. There are leaders gone now that stood up, and they changed that in the 1990s. This is an ancient history, the 1990s. But we had national leaders that got the eagle feathers back. They got the peyote back. Overcame Oregon versus Smith, 1988. Prisoners got to practice sweat lodge in federal prisons again. They passed the National Repatriation Act. We're living in a time where we don't have religious freedom completely. And yet, we're living in a world that's been destroyed by their orientations. 1987, the Christian churches of the Northwest, in 1,800 churches, issued an apology in my name. They said, we're sorry for attacking your spirituality, or for sitting back and passively allowing you to be persecuted. We're sorry, and we promise to be with you. And they made that promise in 97 and 2007. Then the Pope issued his statement in 2015, February, Laudato Si. Pope Francis said, we told you, the Catholics and Christians, that God gave you the earth to have dominion. But we forgot to tell you that God created the earth. Keep it sacred. We forgot to tell you to keep it sacred. But Native Americans, they know that. We know that. That's been the 500-year struggle because of our relationship. Song, dance, ceremony, legend, myth, folklore, traditional knowledge is this umbilical cord that binds us to the earth. All of us have our ways. We renew every year. We've been speaking to a people that don't understand that. All of their laws are written originally for the white man. We're an afterthought. An afterthought. The amendments came because we had to stand up and demand it. Self-determination only began in 1975. We're there, I was there in D.C. when we demanded self-government. I got to participate in the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples negotiations in the 80s and 90s. When I first got there, the Department of State was arguing as if they were still living in the 1950s. Nobody would stand up. I stood up over in Geneva. I said, this is bullshit. You're telling these people lies. You know, and we had to challenge them. I drafted the original first draft paper that the Indian Law Resource Center translated for President Obama to accept the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. On the Lummi Reservation, we actually have a job that we live by, and that's to protect the treaties and sovereignty of the Lummi people. On the side, we carve these totem poles. But wherever we look, we have seen destruction. I was in South Africa. We're asked to go down and teach the South African government a new method for negotiating peace between the blacks and the whites. While I was there, Chernobyl 1 blew. A nuclear disaster. But it was really Chernobyl 2. Chernobyl 1 blew into Russia. Chernobyl 2 blew into Europe. And all of a sudden, it's an international crisis wanted to impact them. Fukushima is killing the Pacific Ocean. We don't have any fish. They're saying 90% of the ocean is dead. Imagine 90% of the U.S. could be dead if we allow them to keep doing this. The rivers are dying. Starting from Yankton on up, the Missouri River is dying. The Yellowstone is dying. The Columbia is dying. The Fraser River is dying. The Athabascan River is dying. We had 3 rivers one time. The Red River is totally gone. You can't even find out where it was. The Nooksack River is a little left than the Red River. It's only about 1 foot wide now. 2 inches deep. Nothing left. All around us, they're fracking. They're destroying the earth. We have nothing to be afraid of. We come here to Standing Rock. We look at all these flags. How come all these tribes came here? How come they came here? Why would all these nations send tribal leaders here to Standing Rock? It's because you stood up and clearly said no as a nation. You stood up clearly saying no. When we began fighting at Cherry Point, our tribe was saying no, maybe if. We think. We're not sure. Why? Because the corporation was there whispering in their ears, lobbying them, buying them dinner, telling them, we'll give you some money. We'll work with you. We're your friends. They wanted our council to sign off, and the council said, okay, they gave us the job to defend that site. They said, what are you going to do now? Well, first of all, we got to get you to say no. You got to get to no. It's never going to happen. And then we're going to fight their permits. Then we're going to undermine their finances. Then when it's all done and over, because that's our sacred cemeteries and village site, we'll buy it with other people's money and put it in protected status for future generations. That's the path we're on. But that's just one little battle. We're really proud that we got to meet Faith Spotted Eagle through Uncle Phil here, Brother Phil. Went down there, met with the Cowboy and Indian Alliance, got to add our voice. Up until the time the president vetoed Keystone. That was a great day this past February. President vetoed Keystone. The Umatillas and the Warm Springs, the Yakimas and the Nez Perce fought the Port of Morrill in Oregon. Along with the environmental groups and church groups, they had a big voice, and the governor vetoed the Port of Morrill. 6 coal ports, 5 down, 1 to go, Longview. That's why we went to Longview to add our voices to the people there fighting that coal port. Why would we fight it so hard? Because the coal's full of arsenic and mercury. About a ton falls off every train. We went up to Sandpoint. They said 45 trains a day will be going through here. From Bakken oil, tar sands oil, and the coal trains. 45 a day. Those are 1.5 mile trains. All going through, all toxic. We thank the Tsleil-Waututh Nation because we went up to meet with them. And they said they're working with Phil Lane and the tribes between Yankton on up, trying to get everybody into a treaty agreement to protect the air, the water, and the land, the original territories. That's what the UN Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People says we can do. That's what it's about. It's a recovery plan. But the United States has to be involved too. They have to be accountable for their part. They just can't keep giving out permission to corporations to do this type of damage. That's free and prior informed consent. They have to have our consent, not just on the reservation, but in our traditional territory. Our spirituality guides us, and we want to know, what is the prophecy? What is changing? Well, one thing we're going to do is we're going to keep on pressuring those Christian churches. You got to teach your kids. You got to teach your membership. Keep the earth sacred. Start every sermon. Start every prayer. Keep the earth sacred. Every time you gather. We started these totem poles, as my brother said, in 9/11. I was escorting the late Senator Daniel into